All right. I believe this means we are live. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, tech fans of all shapes and sorts and sizes and persuasions, welcome to another Monday morning tech chat show on the SGGQA podcast channel. I'm Juan Carlos Bagnell, some gadget guy, the SGG of this terribly, horribly named podcast series. And the QA, of course, stands for question and answer. Every Monday morning, we like to come together and have an interactive conversation about the top tech stories around the internet. It's also why I like to hold my show on a Monday morning. We've had a week to kind of sort out our feelings on what these stories are. We can kind of come back and revisit stories as news breaks. Maybe something happened over the weekend. We want to cover that too. Just making sure that we're all engaged and keeping track of what's going on in the world of technology. I'm already seeing some chatter on the live chat. Hopefully you're joining us if you remember that this is daylight savings time. It's a horrible tradition that we're still holding to in this modern era. And there's no reason for us to keep messing with clocks and time, and it doesn't really seem to do anything beneficial for our society, but we keep doing it. So we lost an hour. That was great. Ha! But again, for folks around the rest of the world, show coming at you at a slightly different time as we deal with Pacific Daylight Time. PDT in effect. But I'm seeing Matt Tyler. I'm seeing Mr. MDub4. Good morning, everyone. I'm seeing JMX Warrior, Mimrangla, Aditya Anil, Sentinel 909. I think we're going to have ourselves a really solid conversation. Mimrangla, is it me or the color grading this time around a bit cooler than normal? Well, again, compared to where we were for the last two episodes of the podcast, I had daylight coming through this window, and now it's earlier, so I don't have daylight coming through this window, and it's probably going to change up as the sun rises. Now, in my neck of the woods, it was also really foggy this morning, so I haven't been messing around with the ISO on my camera as much, but there you go. Oh, and Vazikos 8 stopping by to say, hey, during my vacation, have a happy vacation, Vazikos 8. I'm hoping you're staying safe, because that's going to be a major topic that we're going to be chewing up this morning. We're going to be looking at coronavirus, just basically the impacts of the coronavirus shutting down trade shows, impacting technology and supply lines, and maybe some of the ways that we can react or respond or just try and keep ourselves safe during a potential pandemic. It really has been feeling like that the opening moments of a really terrible, disaster dystopia film. So let's not let it get that bad. And the T-Boys, good morning. The S&P dropped 7% this morning. NYSE halted all trading. It's fine. We're all fine. How are you? Again, my daughter, we finally showed Lex. We finally watched A New Hope with Lex, and she's all about Han Solo. She is very interested in starting a career as a snuggler, because she can't really say smuggler. So I want to be on Han Solo I want to be on the Millennium Falcon with Han Solo and Chewbacca, and we're going to be smugglers, and we're going to smuggle bad guys, and then we're going to fight the Empire. It's adorable. But yeah, that moment in the detention center where he's, we're all fine here, actually got a laugh from my 4-year-old, which is kind of amazing. And Aditya Anil, I should have invested in the lucrative hand sanitizer industry. The T-Boys, Han Solo, Galactic Snuggler is a much friendlier job title. Right on. All right. Like I said, we've got a lot to cover. We've got some news. We've got some coronavirus chat. I just wanted to take a look at the Oppo announcing a new beast of a phone, and the Find X2. Just kind of sharing some initial reactions to what came out from Oppo this week. Let's try and have a fun, well-rounded conversation with the threat of disease, the specter of the Red Death hanging over our heads. I'm gonna try and not get too Edgar Allan Poe on y'all here. DSL Thorn saying hello there. Hello, DSO. Let me swap over my screens here. This is another thing too. The setup has been going really well, knock on wood, for the last couple streams. I think we've ironed out some of the major kinks. I'm still putting together, I mean, you're going to be seeing some slight changes over the next couple weeks to how I mount the camera that I used for this live stream and put together the mic and the audio and all that stuff. But I think we've got it all duct taped together for this stream. Again, knocking on wood that nothing catastrophic happens during this broadcast, which means it's pretty much sure to happen. Peter Hayton joining the live chat. Heiki? Oh, we just had a chat on this on the Patreon. Heiki in the live chat. Good evening from Finland. I hope I'm saying your name correctly. Please correct me if I'm wrong. Meme running lot. Literal duct tape? Actually, literal duct tape would be an improvement over how I've set this up. If I bump the table, you can see how wobbly the camera is right now. That's not good. Because I don't know if you guys know, for a live stream, I use a Panasonic. So I'm actually using a Micro Four Thirds mirrorless camera. Shouldn't be wobbling like that, and I'd hate for this camera to take a tumble after it took so long to get it repaired. Okay, we're going to get into some housekeeping here. Because the Gadget Lab is in disarray, I'm slowly coming back into producing some new content. I've gotten a couple of written articles out, and some new videos are going to be coming to the YouTube, to the public channel very, very soon. I want to start off with an article that I wrote up, Microsoft Office. There's actually been two very interesting updates to Microsoft Office. I know, Microsoft Office, that doesn't necessarily equate to sexy tech conversation, but I think this is an interesting glimpse at where we're going to start taking services, especially mobile services, and how phones and other portable devices are going to start competing against traditional laptops and desktops. So let me go into screen share here. Microsoft Office and the future of dual screen phones. Published this article March 4th, and this was just taking a fun look at what we can do with the new update to Office. So instead of having individual apps, it's not a Word app, Excel app, PowerPoint app, OneNote. Now all of this is being bundled into one main feed of documents, and then you can open any kind of document you want. But what also got updated in this most recent Office update is the ability to use Office better over dual screen devices. So we're getting that glimpse of where Microsoft is going to try and take their services for the Surface Duo and Windows on ARM and Windows 10X. All of these new initiatives that they're going to be pushing out to support dual screen and other various form factors, folding phones. And this is a really fresh take. Being able to keep your document list in one window, have an Excel spreadsheet or a document open in the other panel. You can have multiple different types of documents open. If you want to be writing in Word while you're referencing an Excel spreadsheet, you can do that now on dual screen. And this is, I think, a very practical approach, because we know Microsoft is not going to be doing a folding phone. The first generation of the Surface is going to be two screens with a hinge in the middle. But if you want to play with what Microsoft Office is trying to do now, you can do that on an LG. Like it's already live for dual screen devices today. And also, I just think this is a really clever way that they're allowing an Android app to run multiple instances of Office. And that's kind of how they're keeping two things up at the same time. So actually more than two things up. If you want, you can open up a PDF, split screen it with an Excel spreadsheet, and then keep an entire other document open on the second screen. I mean, it's actually surprisingly flexible. It's going to help get us around some of the issues we've got working in mobile. Like if you use the old Microsoft Office apps, you can only really have one thing up at a time, and then it's really difficult to kind of move back and forth between multiple documents and spreadsheets. Still not as clean as it would be on a full-fledged PC, but this is a nice improvement. So I took a closer look at that. I basically just regurgitated the whole article for you there. The other article, and I posted this yesterday. Okay, well, I need to preface this with the hilarity of, I need to preface this with the hilarity of how much I hate clickbait, but how clickbait actually works. So, let me drop this link in the live chat. And I published this yesterday. I finally got to see the film Knives Out. I have a 4-year-old. Getting out to do movie dates with my wife, and especially after this move, we are just not on top of our movie game like we used to. But one of the things that was one of the reasons why we actually kind of held off on this for a bit longer than we'd intended to is because of the story that we talked about last week. Rian Johnson, in an interview with Vanity Fair, talking about how Apple won't allow movie producers to let bad guys use iPhones in their movies. So there could be a number of reasons on this. You know, if you're making a movie and you use a company's intellectual property, their branding, their trademark, the devices that they've copyrighted and trademarked, you need to seek permissions. And then also in some circumstances, those devices, the use of those devices might mean licensing revenue. So someone might be paying Apple to incorporate their IP into their products, or Apple might be paying to have a featured presentation in a film or a TV show. I mean, we saw that a lot. You know, Windows phones dominated like NBC sitcoms for a couple years. It's because Microsoft was paying to incorporate those devices into those storylines. So we got that story, and we talked about it on the podcast last week. Bad guys can't use Apple products in movies and films. And so we finally saw Knives Out, and I don't want to spoil this article, but Rian Johnson continues to be one of my absolute favorite filmmakers. I think he's just got such a fresh approach to dismantling tropes. It doesn't always lead to the best version of a story, and I think a lot of folks in here would probably agree with that sentiment as it pertains to Star Wars. But Rian Johnson's Star Wars film is an excellent autopsy on the most common tropes in Star Wars film and TV. It's not necessarily the best Star Wars film, but he dismantles a lot of what makes a Star Wars movie, for better or worse. You know, as opposed, he's like the anti-J.J. Abrams. J.J. Abrams doesn't really ever bring the most original voice, but he's really good at playing fan service and playing into tropes. Rian Johnson is tactical at dismantling tropes. So, with this rule, something very, very interesting happens. And Rian Johnson, you know, to his credit, in a way, kind of spoils his own movie to talk about, well, working with Apple, Apple said we couldn't use, you know, bad guys can't be seen using Apple products in our movies. And you'll probably notice that the next time you watch a mystery or a thriller. If someone's using a different type of phone, chances are pretty good it's going to be the killer. What he does in Knives Out is delicious. How he works around Apple's rule and circumvents Apple's policy is just beautiful. Like, by design, it's a phenomenal examination of like culture and entitlement, and I think it's just witty and sharp and interesting. The reason why I wanted to spend just a little time talking about this without completely spoiling the point of my article is I posted the article and I just kind of wrote up a regular tweet, no traffic. I shared that tweet and said, hey, you know, if you're just saying, oh, should have used Android, you're missing the point of the article. Nothing. I shared it again with a joke tweet with a clickbait title. Apple says bad guys can't use iPhones. What Rian Johnson does next will blow your mind. Quintupled the traffic in the first hour after tweeting that. Folks, I really don't want to play the clickbait game. kind of making me want to play the clickbait game. I hate that this works. I purposely tweeted a ridiculous joke headline, will blow your mind, and the traffic to my blog on this article has never been higher. I mean, I posted so many written editorials, and sometimes they get some good traffic. Usually, it's when I'm picking a fight with another outlet, like when I was fighting Android Police and David Ruddock about audio quality and headphone jacks and reviews. Well, that's two tech bloggers getting into fisticuffs. So that editorial is one of my all-time most viewed articles on the website. I think this is now in third place overnight just because of that stupid clickbait title. Matt Tyler, clickbait works. The Silver Ace, I feel that feel, bro. It's so frustrating because I don't want it to. I like if I'm posting something, if I write an article on something, I would hope at this point that those of you who have been following me on Twitter would, kind of know my style. I'm not really trying to game the system, and I'm just trying to share conversations that I think are interesting. But getting folks to take the extra step to share or like or click or not just comment on the title, because that's also the thing. What Ryan Johnson has done here is way more interesting than just everyone should have used Androids if Apple is bad. If that was your reply, you completely missed the point of the article, or it's much more likely you commented on something that you did not read. Killing me that the clickbait works. Sentinel 909. This is how journalism as a thing died. To thunderous applause if we're keeping up with the Star Wars metaphors. And Mr. M Dub, clickbait does work. Matt Tyler, hashtag don't be that guy. Abraham Artemis. See, Abraham Artemis, that's not you. Hashtag explain a movie really badly. A cool Android guy murdered a bunch of iPhone jerks. You didn't read the article. And the T-Voice, it's never a wrong moment to use Star Wars metaphors. If you're using a Star Wars metaphor, you're always correct. We got two other quick little bits of housekeeping before we can move on to some actual stories. These are I'm bringing them up because we've had so much interaction and so much chatter on the Patreon recently. My audio deep dive reviews and my camera deep dive reviews are Patreon exclusives, and so a few things have been cropping up lately that I felt I needed to comment on, specifically audio reviews. So we just got word that GSM Arena, one of the only outlets that has ever tried to consistently measure headphone performance on smartphones, I think their testing methodology has been out of date since the HTC One M8. From the hardware that they use to the things that they're testing for, when we look at the charts on GSM Arena for those headphone tests, we're seeing these tiny little differences from phone to phone to phone. And yet we know there are some devices that are out there just pumping out way more sound, amps like the Axon 7 and the Quad DAC on LG phones, and yet those ranking and charts are all within like 0.2 of a decibel against each other. So we started tracking some of this while I was at Pocket Now. I used to do like speaker comparisons way back in the day. You'll find on my channel a bunch of videos where it's just raw audio captured from the phone. That seems to be the future of most audio reviews. Like DxO, they do audio, but it's basically just how does the speaker on a smartphone sound? No one's really paying attention to headphone audio. And GSM, sorry, that was a rambling way of getting to the point that GSM Arena is going to be walking away from headphone testing for, I guess, forever now. Like that's just not something they're going to track or test anymore. which means I think I'm the only one left. My audio deep dive reviews are literally the last measured headphone DAC amp testing reviews on the internet. And there have been a few. Like, I didn't bother reviewing the iPhone 11 Pro. There hasn't been anything to change that output since the Apple got rid of the headphone jack. But I still feel like there's some value there. So I posted an article on the Patreon just talking about the future of what we're going to be doing. Because if you've been following my Twitter, that also came hand in hand with my audio interface dying. So the audio interface that I've been using to track all of this content, since when? I think I've had it since 2014. Since that interface died, I picked up a new interface, and that's going to be changing the charts and the graphs. They're not comparable. You know, the new interface is actually a little bit cleaner. It's an improvement for the audio quality of the videos that I'm going to be putting together. I mean, scientifically, you're probably not going to hear much of a difference once we go through YouTube, but that's going to impact all of my detailed granular charts and analysis. I can retest phones using this new hardware, but they're not directly comparable. So if I pull up audio from a phone in 2016 that I've recorded and I've saved and I've cataloged, I might not still have that phone, but I could catalog the audio testing. It's not something I can just show you that chart with a phone that I test today. So I go into that in a little bit more detail, just a little bit more conversation on what's going on with that. But I still feel like there's value in looking at cabled audio. I disagree with the assertion that, well, Bluetooth wins and that's what we're going to focus on for the future. Bluetooth is very convenient, and Bluetooth has gotten a lot better. But Bluetooth is an expensive accessory add-on, which is popular in sort of the middle bell curve of smartphone consumers. But that also ignores people at the bookends, people who have designs on really high quality cabled audio, reference grade headphones, recording grade headphones, and people who like the headphone jack for things like using it as a microphone input to get higher quality work done from their phones. And then also people at the opposite end of the market who maybe can't afford an extra $50 or an extra $100 for better quality audio on top of a smartphone purchase. You know, people who might appreciate a Pixel 3a over a Pixel 4 just because they still have some decent earbuds and they want to be able to use those on a smartphone. So if we say speaker audio is the only thing we're going to test, and then Bluetooth is the winner, that to me is an exclusionary review practice. That's an outlet getting lazy and ignoring two smaller but significant chunks of the smartphone market for all of those people that don't want to tack on another battery-powered, expensive accessory which won't last as long and dollar for dollar offers poorer audio output than a cabled solution. Again, Bluetooth still can't make up that difference. If you want Bluetooth audio to compete with cabled audio, you have to spend more to get there because of all of the other things. And then also, if you take care of your headphones, that Bluetooth solution is not going to last as long as a passive cable-powered audio solution. So, I like I said, it's a longer article. It's on the Patreon, but at least for patrons, I'm detailing what my plan is going to be moving forward for audio content, and I don't see any reason to give up on it just yet. Especially with the few phones, I think we're all going to be really excited to see if they do live up to some of those manufacturers' claims. The Sentinel 909, I'm still super sad and bitter about how easily no headphone jack has become the norm, and us crying about it are now whiners. Sentinel 909 with some interesting words for MKBHD. Rosted, doing well. replying to someone else there. Sorry, I thought Rosker was replying to something that I said. Mimranglot, you may want to do a library of old benchmarks with older devices. I've got the cataloged data there. I reference it in other audio reviews. It's just now I don't feel like it's, I don't know. I'm in a weird place right now because this is an improvement. I like having higher quality gear, and this is going to be really fun for the V60. This new audio interface actually shows off some of the more granular differences. And this is such sciencey, nerdy stuff. I mean, we're talking like decibel differences here and there. And because this interface is a little bit cleaner, I'm consistently now able to reproduce and demonstrate some of the differences between things like the Qualcomm DAC on an LG phone versus the quad DAC in low amp output versus the quad DAC in high amp output. Before, it was a little more inconsistent and I wasn't able to see those differences as clearly, so I kind of just rolled them all up together. And now, scientifically, I've got a better grasp on what some of those differences might be and how they're going to impact things like cabled earbuds. I'm very much looking forward to the V60 and the Xperia 1 Mark II. With this new gear, I'm going to have a look at that headphone jack performance like I've never had for high quality audio solutions. So I'm super excited about that. It's just, if I want to compare it against older devices, I've got to retest everything that I want to compare it, and that just takes time. So yeah, I'm not looking forward to some of that replication of work. From Heiki, what kind of audio testing rig do you have now? I mean, the new one. I'm sticking with Focusrite as a brand. I don't like Focusrite support. The shenanigans I went through in trying to repair or replace my old Focusrite interface, not good. But the thing is, I'm really familiar with their hardware, and there's a feature set that I kind of depend on. Things like dual headphone jacks, so I can A/B headphones really, really quickly and really, really easily. I wanted to do business with someone else. I was looking at PreSonus. I was looking at a couple other, like, even more boutique options, but it kind of came down to my ability to get work done efficiently just meant I had to pop another interface from Focusrite. Again, I love their hardware. I would caution folks, some of their end of life support is a bit lacking. Once you get out of that main 3-year manufacturer's warranty, not fun to deal with, but feature set in the moment, brand new device. I'm excited for the capabilities here. So hopefully this one lasts me at least as long as my last interface did. From Tech Love and Mama, it's just like wireless charging. Wired charging is better, but wireless is more convenient. Even if wireless charging is more expensive, I prefer wired charging. Let me throw this out here into the live chat. How many people here feel that wireless charging is actually more convenient? How many folks are kind of like me, where you're probably really not supposed to, but I still use my phones pretty heavy while they're charging? I'm just kind of curious. Like, I was one of those geeks that was super into Qi charging when Nokia first started putting it into Lumias. But over the years, and as wireless charging really hasn't lived up to the cool factor, I've actually curtailed my use of wireless charging, and I'm more likely to use wired charging. If it's a situation where I can only put my phone down for a couple minutes, it has to be wired charging because I want it to charge as fast as possible. If it's a situation where I still need to use my phone, it has to be wired charging because if I pick it up, it's going to remove contact from the Qi charging plate. I'd just be kind of curious. And this isn't like to call out someone who who depends on wireless charging. I'm just, again, in the live chat, drop a comment. What is your, or give us a breakdown. Like, what would you say your wired to wireless charging ratio might be? Because right now I would say easily 95% wired charging to maybe 5% wireless with just whatever I can plop down on my desk here. And I have cables on my desk to plug in phones at the same time. The last bit of housekeeping to do, because housekeeping is running super long and I'm getting really rambly today. A major video is out on the Patreon. This one is huge. This is it took a long time to collect everything that I needed for this video, and then we moved in between me collecting a ton of photo and video samples and actually being able to sit down and edit what eventually became a 36-minute video. I am, of course, talking about my iPhone 11 Pro Max camera deep dive review. What we should expect from an $1,100 64 gigabyte 4G smartphone. It took a while. This was this was a tricky video to put together. There's so much that you need to qualify. And in the review, I'm not spoiling anything in the review, and especially if you've seen my other iPhone 11 Pro videos, I'm having a philosophical issue with Apple calling this a Pro device. I am way more positive on the iPad Pro being called the Pro device as mobile apps are getting more sophisticated, and iPad OS giving us better functionality and better layouts for managing content and content creation and higher levels of work. The Mac Pro is really expensive, but looks a lot more like a proper professional grade workstation, upgradable, modular design, taking us back to an idea of those old Power Macs and Mac Pros, that classic big case, big airflow kinds of design. Way more positive on that. Calling a phone a Pro, I feel it needs to live up to that same division of work. An iPhone 11 versus an iPhone 11 Pro should showcase the differences in power and performance and demand, especially when Apple is making huge claims about content creation and using their phones to shoot this super beautiful looking content in multi-million-dollar production facilities with an army of filmmakers. I love that shot from the Filmic presentation as, a hip young lady is mounted an iPhone 11 Pro onto a tripod and is being wheeled in by an assistant on a dolly. So if that's the expectation, if that's the claim Apple is making, it takes a while to dig through photo and video samples and look at the comparative performance to see if this phone really does outperform other gadgets of similar pricing and similar tier and flagship grade performance. So that video is 36 minutes long. There's going to be a public camera conclusion. I'm doing the edit on that right now, just kind of smashing the beginning and the end of this video together. And even that's going to end up being about a 9 or a 10-minute video. So that'll hopefully be out tomorrow. There will be a public version of this iPhone 11 Pro, but the full super deep dive, the full 36-minute video, patreon.com/SomeGadgetGuy. Meme Ranglot, if the iPhone 11 was called the iPhone 11 Plus, some gadget guy may not be in this conundrum. I actually say that in the video. Well played, Meme Ranglot. Adichie Anil, Juan is pro, TK is pro. Coincidentally, they're bros, but the iPhone 11 Pro is a major, major no. I like your Dr. Seuss approach to critiquing TK and I's review style. From Heiki, I watched the iPhone camera deep dive yesterday while waiting for the train, and in the end, I was as exhausted as Juan was in the video. Hilarious. All right, so I'm seeing a lot of people commenting on wireless charging, and almost everyone in this live chat is saying virtually no wireless charging. Most everyone here is doing cabled charging. I think this is something worth just, again, kind of keeping an eye on for our family and friends, too. In all of the drama around increasing phone prices and right to repair legislation. A charging protocol which is less efficient, wastes power, generates more heat, and will likely reduce the overall life of your phone, to me seems like not a great solution. It seems like a really good solution for a manufacturer who wants to encourage you to buy devices more frequently than you might need to. That's just my tinfoil hat take on wireless charging. All right, so let's get into some news. I wanted to start off this week. So the second half of this podcast is going to be coronavirus. There are so many individual little stories on the ramifications of coronavirus, the things that are getting shut down, the reactions, the public policy. I want to save that for the end block. And then also for those of you who might feel like you want to filter out of that conversation, that's going to be coming at the tail end of the podcast. I really wanted to start off with something just kind of cute. This is like the nerd equivalent of hugging a puppy. And I wanted that one little tidbit of fun trivia, nifty information. So I was so happy to see this headline. My wife sent me this headline off of Reddit from The Economist. The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy turns 42 this year. There's not a story there. It's just, 42 is a very significant number in the world of The Hitchhiker's Guide. And this is an important anniversary for one of the most formative works of comedy fiction I ever read. The delicious absurdity of British comedy, perfectly encapsulated through Douglas Adams' wit and style. One of my absolute all-time favorite authors and screenwriters. If you were ever going to revisit The Hitchhiker's Guide, I'm going to reread the entire series again. I come back to this book like every other year where I just have to, I don't know why, there's a burning desire. I have to reread The Hitchhiker's Guide. So if you were ever going to read The Hitchhiker's Guide, the 42nd anniversary of the publishing of the first Hitchhiker's Guide, that would be the right time to read this book. The T-voice. Poor deep thought. It was off from the answer to life, the universe and everything by just 4. The real answer was 46. So close, and yet so far. A galaxy of distance between those 4 numbers. Absolutely adore this book. Love this book, and again, an author who was taken from us too soon, and whose work deserves to be remembered and celebrated until the end of human existence, the end of human civilization. And I think he would also sort of appreciate some of the hilarity of what we're going through today. The drama and hilarity of what we're going through today. So just a fun little tidbit. It's a fun little piece of trivia, and please share that with family and friends. The next time you're at like a cocktail party, you can just casually mention, oh yeah, it was 42. Hors d'oeuvres. That's me at a fancy dinner party talking about literature. In case you were wondering what the heck that just was. It was a really bad piece of improv play acting. So from something kind of lighthearted and whimsical and fun to talk about to the first real news story of the day, sent in from James Vincent. This is JMX. A horrific piece of news for folks out there trying to improve security and updates and patches. This is coming by way of Frostbite. Let me go into screen share. The link is in the live chat. Over 1 billion Android devices, that's billion with a B, at risk due to end of update cycle. Written by Anmal Sachdeva. I have mispronounced your name, and I apologize. All right, from the beginning of the article, according to a report by the consumer review company Which, more than 1 billion Android devices are at risk as they are running Android versions that no longer receive security updates. Going by its update cycle, Google is now offering security updates only for devices running on Android 10, Android 9, and Android 8. Devices running Android 7 or older are no longer eligible for security updates and thus, quote, will carry security risks, end quote, as per the report. This is the thing that should kick us all in the gonads, by the way. Last year, Google released the Android adoption data where it revealed that around 40% of Android devices are still powered by Android 6 or older versions. So I want that to sink in. As of last year, 40% of Android devices were still running Android 6, and this year, Android 7 is no longer going to be getting security patches and updates. This is not a super great look for Google as we're trying to, especially as Google is trying to rein in the separation between what software they put out, how updates are handled by manufacturers, and then how carriers get involved with the update process as well. I know I've seen those charts, but when it's just so starkly put that such a significant portion of the Android ecosystem is not only out of date, but now at least 2 whole generations of operating system updates out of date, and is now 2 generations, a huge chunk of the population is now 2 generations of Android out of security updates. I feel we could be doing better with this. At some point, I think Google will have to rip the Band-Aid. I just said Google, and now 3 phones on my desk just lit up. Google is going to have to rip off the Band-Aid and start looking at what it's going to take to push the operating system, the kernel, the main core Android updates directly to devices. Apple has the leverage to prevent carriers from getting in the way. Microsoft is probably gonna be able to circumvent some of Google's mobile strategy just because they control Windows. You get your updates directly from Microsoft. It doesn't matter if you've got an Asus, a Dell, an HP, a Lenovo, an Acer, a Toshiba. That update isn't coming from the manufacturer. The manufacturer needs to update drivers for things, but Windows, that's coming directly from Microsoft. And we also see that Qualcomm is starting to separate out some of this from Google's control, like GPU updates on the Snapdragon 865. Qualcomm is going to be able to push drivers and updates and patches directly to their hardware. I feel like Google is overdue now. Things like Project Treble didn't seem to have the far-reaching impact that we were hoping. I mean, we saw some slightly better traction at the upper premium tier of the market. Samsung got a little bit better at updates over last year. LG got a little bit better about updating the most recent phones over the last year. But increasingly what we see is that steep drop-off, that steep fall for the people who are already the most vulnerable in our society. If you were foolish enough to be poor around the world, not only was your phone probably packed with malware when you first bought it, you were kicked off the update train long before you even had a chance to really work out what it meant to have better security and patches, and that's just not a great look. I mean, it's just really, really frustrating to see that we're still struggling with this so hard, and that I feel like these manufacturers and Google need to live up to their commitments to better support the devices for lower income individuals. The Android One program is a mess. That's not living up to expectations at all. And I mean, we're barely competitive when it comes to extremely expensive devices at the high end too. This is increasingly becoming a more frustrating aspect of covering Android as an ecosystem just for how badly broken up it is. From Pacostin, Qualcomm wants to push updates to their hardware. That's news to me. There's a reason why Qualcomm isn't used in Chromebooks. Hint, it has to do with required updates time limit. Look up the info on the GPU that's going to be stapled onto the Snapdragon 865, because that was a major part of Qualcomm's presentation for that piece of hardware. Was they can better craft specific game drivers, improve performance, and push those updates to that chipset. So it's not just you buy the phone and that stuff's baked in and then you're done. The GPU on the Snapdragon 865 should get better over time if they follow a model that's a bit more like NVIDIA's and how NVIDIA updates graphics drivers. From Heikki, isn't the situation the same with Windows? If I recall correctly, there is a lot of critical infrastructure that works on Windows 7 or even older, like hospitals and power plants. Yeah, so because of the way that Microsoft updates the operating system, a lot of agencies became complacent. I can't tell you the amount of government work I still see where someone's running an old file server or an old database system, or like there was like just a weirdly configured print driver on a large format printer that was running off of a Windows XP machine. But that to me is a significant difference when Microsoft has a 10-year support layout for Windows. It's easy for an organization to get complacent when Microsoft determines that operating system is end of life. Right now, in the Android ecosystem, you might have a brand new $1,000 smartphone that's still an Android 9. I'm not really going to talk about it much in the gadget block, but the Asus ROG Phone 2 just got its Android 10 update. I think it was last week that the 5G version of the OnePlus 7 Pro just got its Android 10 update. The most expensive phones took a long time to get Android 10, and then Google is going to say you're out of support in 3 generations. So Android 7 no longer getting security patches or updates. Sucks to be you. You shouldn't be poor. You just have to buy a new device. You want the software? Just buy a new phone. Just let them eat cake. I don't actually know what Microsoft's current support window was. I wanted to say it was something like 5 years for a significant feature update, and then that got reset with service packs, and then it was an additional 5 years for bug fixes and support. So I want to say Microsoft was under some sort of staggered 10-year plan. But even to the end of that 10-year, you were getting security patches and bug fixes. Even if you weren't getting major feature improvements to Windows, you were still getting the security stuff. I could totally be wrong there. Someone please correct me in the live chat if that's changed. But also it seems like Microsoft is trying to turn Windows into more of a service. So, we're on Windows 10 and we're going to get Windows 10X and Windows 10 Streamlined Edition and Windows 10 just for apps and a bunch of other things. I don't know that we're going to be seeing the same major Windows update package as much as we'll see Windows morphing over time as Microsoft decides to roll out new services. Yeah, and from DSO Thorn, that's kind of what I was reading into their statements too. They said Windows 10 was going to be the last version of Windows. And in that, I really feel like Microsoft is really trying to turn all of their software into services. So you get an updated service over time, not every 5 years you buy a new box and install a new thing. It's just constantly morphing over that time. The T-Boys is dropping some funny comments this week. Everyone give him a thumbs up. Companies, I don't understand why they don't just buy our newer, more expensive products. Customers, we're poor. Companies, what? How can that be? Customers, you don't pay us enough. Companies, no, that doesn't sound right. Surely we can blame someone else for your lack of wages. For me, the last thing would be like, well, you just need to pick yourself up by your bootstraps and work harder. So talking about security threats and how vulnerable consumers typically are the ones that are sort of the most targeted by poor support and devices that kind of fall out of date more frequently. This was brought to my attention. This was a tip sent in by David Mondra. He sent me an email just with a link to a GitHub conversation. I am not qualified as a security consultant to comment directly on this data here, but it's something I wanted to keep an eye on, and I'm reaching out to two of my friends who are way savvier at like the white hat hacking side of corporate security, just to see if they can weigh in or comment on this. But again, it's a concerning look at how deep some of this schism runs for who can afford a nicer device and who can afford to actually have their data and content protected. So I'm going to drop this here in the live chat, and if someone wants to read through this and throughout the podcast, maybe help out with some commentary. But like I said, this is from a GitHub conversation. Third-party telemetry found in Nokia smartphones. I recently purchased a Nokia 6.2 and wanted to check if it sends any data somewhere, considering what happened with previous models. He goes through this individual. I shouldn't say he. This individual goes on to detail some of the telemetry that he's tracking, and he's finding using an APK extractor. He's found that there's information, including data usage and SMS and call data, that's being sent to a Colombian server. Turns out Citic.com.co is a Colombian company who, quote, are leaders in innovation and create mobile and web applications for new products and services. Quote, in other words, this app is third-party telemetry hidden from the user, not mentioned in the privacy policy, that has access to SMS. This looks very bad, and I really hope this is a malware injected by factory and not something knowingly distributed by Nokia, HMD Global, the EU company. So a concerning bit of information. I don't know that I would act immediately on this piece of information, like if you were shopping a mid-ranger or an entry-level Nokia smartphone. But it's this type of stuff that gets increasingly difficult to untangle. Smartphones are now a global communication property where your information is stored in cloud services and referenced and analyzed by various other entities. It's really difficult to pin down exactly where your data is going. We mentioned it on the podcast. We didn't really dig into the story too deeply, but Samsung had a storage cleaning plugin that was sending information to Chinese servers. Samsung, in Samsung's statement, they said, "Hey, there's nothing. We take our security very seriously. Samsung has Knox. They're trying to stay corporate grade, but obviously they can't create every single kind of piece of software to do things like check the data on your phone, check the storage on your phone, and help you make a determination what can be deleted, what can be saved. Help you clean up your device." So that kind of got pushed out of the tech news cycle really, really quickly. Samsung's reply seemed to satisfy most people. Whether or not we really saw that there was personally identifiable information being sent to Chinese servers, when Samsung rolled a recent update, many phones that had this third-party plugin listed in the storage settings on the phone, suddenly that was pulled from Samsung phones. Like the mention of who they were using as a third-party service to check the storage on your phone was suddenly not this company which was sending info to Chinese servers. So, Samsung solved the problem. They just stopped telling you what they were using to check the storage on their phones. Totally safe. No security issues there. Nothing to see. It's Samsung. They're popular. It's great. Just keep using it. So when we hear about something like Nokia, I've been a little frustrated with the Android One badging. This isn't unique to Nokia. I just mean Android One in general, not really getting the updates and the patches and the support on a handful of phones that I really feel like that label should guarantee. And we know a few of these lower cost manufacturers have played with how information is stored and tracked and what commercialized programs they have for this data. And then there's something like this. So again, I'm hoping to get some kind of comment from someone more knowledgeable than I am about this stuff. But I hope this is caught by some kind of security patch, or it's acknowledged in a future Android update, or that Nokia can confirm, by the way, we're not secretly selling your data in the background on your phone because we made a cheap phone. We need to monetize how we made the phone less expensive. Because that's just, again, I don't want that uncertainty in the market. I want to be able to recommend an inexpensive device and not have the customer for that device be punished for buying a poor person's phone. That to me just leaves a very, very acidic taste in my mouth. Matt Tyler, Samsung. Oh, look, a distraction. That'll fool him. Again, it was hilarious reading through the Android subreddits. Just like the Samsung legit haters out there, like, oh, this is terrible. And then like the Samsung white knights brigading hard. You don't have any proof, and Samsung said it wasn't an issue, and there's no reason to doubt them, and you know everyone sucks. And then like no follow up, no follow through. It's fine. You didn't need to know whether or not that was actually a threat on your $1,000 Galaxy smartphone. Just keep going. Just keep doing stuff. It's fine. Ugh. All right. Talking about companies getting their comeuppance for shady business practices. I don't believe Apple is getting their comeuppance for shady business practices. Dropping this one in the live chat. This one's a little bit frustrating. So we've talked about this story a lot. I think it's one of the most insidious and reprehensible anti-consumer business practices that the modern technological age has ever seen. I am, of course, talking about Apple's battery throttling, where as the phone would age, Apple would secretly slow your phone down with no disclosure as to what it was that they were doing under the auspices of trying to maintain consistent performance. But right around the time that you'd be shopping a new phone, like if you were on a 2-year contract, wouldn't you know it, Apple software updates would wreck your performance just when you were maybe thinking about also trying to buy that super new expensive phone. When this practice was discovered, Apple apologized with a year of really low-cost battery replacements. I got my iPhone SE battery replaced for $30 under that program. I really feel like it should have been free, but I got it replaced for $30 when normally that's like an $80 or $100 battery replacement. That year, Apple detailed that battery replacement program was a significant impact, had contributed significantly to a drop in sales on new phones. For the years that Apple had been quietly and secretly wrecking the performance of their phones through software patches, that was a significant contributing factor to new device sales. So we finally have the beginnings of a judgment on a settlement for Apple in their legal action. They've basically been facing litigation since this was discovered. And this is from Reuters, written up by Jonathan Stempel. Apple Incorporated has agreed to pay up to $500 million to settle litigation accusing it of quietly slowing down older iPhones as it launched new products to induce owners to buy replacement phones or batteries. All right, I kind of want another general showing of hands. Apple did this for years, which was years of them significantly profiting off of planned obsolescence. And we know that Apple makes a huge chunk of their revenue on iOS products, iPads and iPhones. So over years of that practice, where every quarter they're putting down billions in revenue, how many of us really think that $500 million is enough to punitively settle this issue and correct Apple's business practices as a $1 trillion company? How long do we think they'll be able to make up how long do we think it'll take them to make up that $500 million slap on the wrist? So going on in the article, here, let me go back into screen share. Drop a comment in the live chat. I'm just curious if anyone thinks that this is like the correct action to change the behavior of a $1 trillion company. The preliminary proposed class action settlement was disclosed on Friday night and requires approval by U.S. District Judge Edward Davila in San Jose, California. It calls for Apple to pay consumers $25 per iPhone. $25, which may be adjusted up or down depending on how many iPhones are eligible, with a minimum total payout of $310 million. Apple denied wrongdoing and settled the nationwide case to avoid the burdens and costs of litigation, court papers show. So instead of any actual justice or seeing some disclosure in court, $300 million at least. Well, that's pretty good, right? That's enough. Apple totally learned their lesson and not do anything like that. I mean, now today, they still slow down your phone. Once your battery starts to wear out a little bit, they still hit you with a performance deficit. They still throttle your CPU. It's just now they tell you. It's buried in the settings. But, there is now, when you know where to look for the battery health setting deep in the iPhone settings, you totally know as an informed consumer what Apple is doing to your phone. And it's now it's fine. Now it's fine that they just tell you that they're doing it. From Aditya Anil, Apple will make up that money in around 4 months after they launch the 2020 budget iPhone. I don't think it's going to take them 4 months. Their quarterlies are... Their quarterly investor meetings are... again, most of the conversation surrounds billions with a B, not millions. Oh, but Rosted, that's a good point. It might take a little longer since supplies are delayed due to shops being closed in China. Yeah, that's true. Fat Produce. I like where Fat Produce's head is at. Apple should have been fined at least $6 billion. I'm not sure where he's getting that money, but I'm sure it's a very legally learned assessment of the potential damages done to Apple consumers. DSO Thorn, it should have paid a certain percentage of how much they profited off of those phones from those years. From Mr. MW4, do you think that was Apple's way of getting people to upgrade? It absolutely was. It was absolutely pressure placed on the consumer, and it was detailed in Apple's quarterly financials when they did the battery replacement program. I mean, there's no hiding this. There's no kind interpretation of this business practice. They're settling because they know if they have to go to disclosure, it's going to look terrible, and the prolonged discussion on that is going to have an emotional impact on their brand. And we know how Apple cares about the emotional impact of their brand as it pertains to movies where they can't let bad guys use iPhones because, won't someone please think of the children, the impressionable children who all want to buy iPhones. We know that this had a direct impact on their sales. When consumers could replace the batteries on iPhones inexpensively, we saw a significant number of consumers hold onto their devices longer. And then we saw, even in my circles of family and friends, I had an aunt who could barely use her iPhone. And I told her, $30, go get the battery replaced. And she gave me that really obnoxious non-techie, okay, I'll do it. It's not going to fix anything. And she had a brand new phone. It was like her phone was brand new. And she held onto that phone for another year and a half off that $30. So where she was totally in line and she was ready to do this $30 just to tell me to shut up because she knew like Apple wouldn't steer her wrong. That $30 battery replacement made her phone run like new again. We know that this was a direct contributing factor to sales, and when it was disclosed, we saw a significant hit to Apple sales as we saw people taking advantage of that battery replacement program and just the knowledge that Apple had engaged in this business practice. There is no getting around that. This isn't hating on Apple. They're a $1 trillion company that fights right to repair legislation and engages in business practices to make it more difficult for you to repair your device, while also trying to force you to cycle your devices more frequently than you should need to. Them's just facts. And when we can at least tag these companies appropriately for these types of shenanigans, that's when we'll have a healthier retail market, better competition, and better consumer education. And that's where we need to go. It's going to take a long time to get there because right now this is all fashion labeling and emotional reactive purchasing. But I feel like consumers are getting real tired of super premium expensive devices that don't do much more than mid-ranger products, and entry-level phones have never looked better. So many people that I know that are looking at, I don't think my next phone's going to be more than $400 because it doesn't need to be. From Vazicos 8, lawmakers don't know percentages. From DSO Thorn, and again, I think a lot of us in this live chat would completely agree with this too. I miss removable batteries so much. My dad still got his V20, not the performer it used to be, obviously, but still doing better than my S8 is. We talked about this too. You know, where did I put? Oh yeah. So I haven't replaced it yet, but my beautiful, one of the best phones ever made in the history of smartphone design, my Galaxy Note 4, the original battery that came in this phone started failing on me. So now it's around 30%. When it gets to around 30%, the phone just crashes. And it sucks because I use this phone on almost every video I shoot here in the Gadget Lab. This phone, while it's not a daily driver smartphone, is unbelievably good at being a ticker display for my little mini teleprompter. So I have a little teleprompter. This slots in perfect. And I can use this phone better than almost any newer device. The screen is the right shape, the right size. The back is a grippy material so it doesn't slide out of the plastic caddy. This device is gorgeous. But the battery started failing on me. I am going to buy a replacement battery. I'm going to keep this Note 4 running until the eMMC fails, which was actually a pretty common problem with the Note 4 as it got into later life. But when I buy a new battery for this phone, you've seen like iFixit teardowns. Well, this is what I'm going to have to do on my Note 4. I'm going to wedge a fingernail into the top corner of the phone, and I'm going to peel this off, and I'm going to take out the battery, and then I'm going to put a new battery in, and I'm going to take the back, and I'm going to just kind of smush it. You see how that's the technical term. You smush it all around, and then my phone will have a new battery. Because I'm a flipping grown-up, and I can replace the battery in a phone if I'm given just the basic access to do so. Driving me so crazy that we've just accepted so many of these compromises for phone design in the name of, I mean, I don't even know what at this point, just pretty? Like every phone is a glass-on-glass sandwich of prettiness. And it's just so sad. It makes me so freaking sad that that's what we've given up, that practicality, that consumer accessible design, and also that our phones can be more fragile and more disposable. Just such a bummer. Huge bummer. Abraham Artemis, what a simple teardown. I love it. LFA reviews, hashtag flippin' grown up squad. And Ross did, yeah, that was the Note 4. I still hold the Note 4 up as absolutely one of the shining crown jewels of smartphone design. The Note 4 was an absolute monster of a phone. It's still, surprisingly, a pretty capable device today. You know, being ahead of the curve on a lot of the tech that we just take for granted, a super high resolution OLED, 4K video recording, expandable storage, that removable battery. It's got an IR blaster where you could, I don't, but you could use it as a universal remote. This thing is, I feel like, the last generation of Note, which was the true, uncompromised, absolute beast of a phone for its generation. I feel like after the Note 4, the Note became a Galaxy S with an S Pen. I feel like we've been on that march where the Note is increasingly being marginalized in Samsung's portfolio, and the Galaxy S was getting all of the cool, exciting tech at the beginning of the year. Note 5 did not hold up nearly as well as the Note 4 did. My Note 5 is a paperweight. All of the Samsung phones I have from that generation, with the exception of the S6 Edge Plus, have essentially failed. And it's really disappointing to see how Samsung shifted their design on stuff like that, because I feel like they used to push the boundaries a lot more aggressively. Tech Lovin' Mama, I miss my Note 4. I had for 3 years as my daily driver before upgrading. I'll never give up that phone. That's going to be a museum showpiece phone long after I'm done reviewing gadgets and I retire from this. That's going to be a part of my collection, even if it no longer boots. I'm just going to hold it up and say, hey, we used to have this. This used to be rad. All right. So that's the disappointing conclusion to the Apple battery throttling settlement. People are going to say $500 million. Whoa, that sounds like a lot. If you were affected by it, you might be able to get $25. I've got 2 iPhones in there that I'm going to see. Especially my iPhone SE, just, are they going to be eligible for any type of class action situation? Probably not. It's just really frustrating because I feel like this should have been a bigger deal, but it's Apple. They're a popular brand. So much media and marketing and messaging. The consumer fan base that love their Apple products were the ones that were most affected by this. The people most defending Apple were the people who were hurt the most by this business practice. And yet they're still the ones out there defending Apple the most. I just feel like there should have been some other action, some other consequence for this type of business practice. And I feel like just the unfairness of it is quite stark. So I think we should take a little bit of break. Excuse me. I think we should take a little bit of a break and talk about content creation and how we can support some of our favorite online producers. I'm going to take another drink of water here real quick. So, my phone is making my speakers crackle. Radiation. That's not scary. Every podcast has a subreddit or some kind of community forum, something like that. Some subreddits are really focused on like news and clips and things to talk about in the podcast. Some subreddits are just sort of fan community sites where people can hang out and talk about the podcast. My podcast is no different. I run a subreddit. It's reddit.com/r/glowing rectangles. Small little community. We just broke 690 subscribers. I think we're at 691 as of this morning. But what I really wanted to showcase and what I really wanted to highlight were ways that we as consumers of content, as the viewers of content, can better support the people who are making this stuff. The challenges facing a content creator today are pretty stark. Monetization has never been lower. Ad metrics, analytics, how you share your videos, how your videos are discovered, all working against the sort of bread and butter content delivery systems, unless you have a channel with millions of subscribers. And even then, you're seeing a lot of those top tier YouTube producers spinning off, making other channels, starting up podcasts. When even like Unbox Therapy and MKBHD are making their own podcasts separate from just the main feed of YouTube content, I think we can get some pretty clear indications on what it's like to make content online today. So my initiative was to try and create a grassroots movement to help us, to give us some tools to help better share and support the people making stuff. So it's not just for tiny little new channels that haven't reached monetization. It can also be for larger channels who just aren't getting the attention we think they deserve. So if you go to reddit.com/r/glowing rectangles, we're going to look at the top stories that were shared this week on the subreddit. That's out in the live chat now, and I'm going to screen share here. And number one with the bullet, because we've been talking about this a lot today. Luis Rossmann, what is right to repair? An introduction for curious people. Luis Rossmann has become one of the most vocal proponents of right to repair legislation. He has been flying to different state hearings when they're proposing legislation for or against right to repair, and he's also been talking about this a lot on his channel, especially as it pertains to, like how Apple builds their products, the reputation that Apple has for reliability, and how when Apple does something kind of scummy, the rest of the industry might copy it, in certain ways where they might, remove the ability to replace a battery or make a screen repair more difficult. So he's got a primer. If you've been curious about what the actual finer details of right to repair are, this is a video that you can share with other people who also might be curious or looking for some information, some commentary, especially if that information and commentary didn't come out of a lobbyist group. Because there's a lot of FUD surrounding right to repair. Like, it's going to be dangerous if you let people fix their own things. Proprietary information, we've got to protect IP. It's not that, a 75-cent fan on your Xbox, we can't let you replace the fans on your Xbox. You might learn trade secrets. So no, what you have to do is send your Xbox into Microsoft. And Microsoft will charge you to send you a refurb. And all your game data will be wiped out. But you were saved from the torment and the potential health risks of replacing the fan in your Xbox. Because you were afraid of that. You couldn't have possibly cracked open that case on your own to replace that fan. Number two, looking back at an older device, we got TK MyBay chatting up a Galaxy S10, S10 Plus. So in light of the S20, some of the drama surrounding that launch and whether or not that device was up to spec. Again, the Galaxy S20 Ultra is a $1,400 phone, which had a lot of teething pains at launch. TK Bay taking a spin back to look at the S10 Plus because you can get it for around $500 now, depending on where you're shopping it. So in this day and age, what your demands might be, what you need to do on a phone, TK's got a great look at an older phone, but one that's still probably going to perform really well for a lot of people out there, especially at a sub $500 price point. And then there was a lot of chatter over the last couple days, especially 3 days ago when the embargoes lifted. The Nubia Red Magic 3 and 3S, the 90 hertz RGB gaming phone, cooling fan buttons, a 5,000 milliamp hour battery, 8K video, immediately followed by Gadget Byte, also taking a look at the Red Magic 3 review. And then after that, rounding out the top 5, we've got a video from TechSpert looking at phones under 400 pounds. We've got Fandroid, Nick Gray's site. I love Nick Gray's content. TCL's insane flexible display smartphone. Josh Vergara taking a longer look at the Galaxy Z Flip and some of the criticisms of the Z Flip. We've got the Oppo Reno 3 Pro review from Gary Explains, and a bunch of other content. We've got video from Newegg on Half-Life Alyx, JBL speakers, and another video from Gary Explains talking about ARM processors, an 80-core 64-bit ARM processor, the Ampere Ultra. So you can take a look at some really, really fun content. And I know you're saying TK Our Bay, but I believe it's TK My Bay. So that's I'm the winner there. Actually, Matt Tyler, hashtag some punchable face guy. I don't think any of mine. Oh no, I did my article on Microsoft Office is in the top 10. Last week I was leading the charts on my subreddit. It's pretty rare that I'm top spot on my own subreddit. My articles and videos aren't consistently voted to the top, which also just, it makes me really happy. The initiative for this subreddit is to spread more content. This is stuff you're less likely to see show up in the trending video feed on YouTube or the trending topics on Facebook and Twitter. But we see this phenomenal diversity of producers, content creators, locations, Indian, we've got British, American, people all around the world talking about different technology topics. Whereas when you go to YouTube, it's like you're going to get front loaded with Samsung and Apple commentary. People are making a lot of content out there about a variety of topics. So if you go to reddit.com/r/glowingrectangles and you've never been before, I guarantee you're going to find a new creator that you really like. So again, this is my call to action. Help support, help share, use your social media, use your interactions with family and friends to give a lift to content that you think deserves the attention. The passive view doesn't really help. You watch something, you think it's cool, and then you go, oh, well, I hope they make more. It's harder out there for a content creator to stay on top of this stuff. If you want to see more cool content from these people, a little bit more interaction, a little bit more sharing, a little bit more commentary. We're getting some amazing shares here on the subreddit. I really want to thank all of you out there who are participating, who are sharing content. We're seeing more upvotes. We're seeing more traction. We can always use more interaction. So don't be stingy with those up arrows. If you drop a link and you share something and you want your share to be upvoted, also consider upvoting other people's content. You know, again, this is going to be the snowball effect that hopefully gets these people some more visibility and hopefully means that they'll start getting shared on other subreddits more consistently. That'll really help a channel blow up on a social news site like Reddit. So reddit.com/r/glowingrectangles, and you'll be happy that you checked it out. Guarantee there is no corrective action if you don't like it as much. That guarantee comes with no penalties for me. Q3 Becker. Hashtag some possessive jerk with a hat. Oh, DSO Thorn. Anyone who speaks about anything that's not the S20 Ultra makes me happy. And Matt Tyler, come on, people, support your favorite content creators. It's worth it for you and them. Yeah, there's so many other conversations. So one of the things that kind of blew up my Twitter and YouTube feed for a hot minute, I wanted to just bring this up. I won't be going hands-on anytime soon. I have no relationship with Oppo. They don't seed United States-based reviewers the same like they might international reviewers. Like, again, if your channel's enormous or you've also been working, like your channel metrics support that like you're really popular in a region outside of the United States, then Oppo will probably reach out better. For someone my size, they're not hitting this. Apologies if you can hear this. There's a leaf blower right outside my window, and it's horrifically distracting. And so I'm pretty sure it's going to be on the podcast, and there's nothing I can do about that. But I'm also going to blame daylight savings time for this yard action that's happening here, because it's awful, and I hate it. From Rosted, Oppo is major everywhere, except here in the United States. So let me scroll this over here. I just wanted to bring this up because I find this... Oh, man, I accidentally pasted the last article. 1 second, let me copy this and we're gonna drop it into the live chat, and we've got that right there. Man, he's like really going to town. Freaking hate, like, this isn't any more efficient than a broom at this point. He would be clearing leaves and debris faster with a push broom, but he's just like hosing down this one area with the gas powered leaf blower, just right here, and it's like the yard work equivalent of watching someone roll over the same piece of grit with a vacuum, and the vacuum doesn't pick it up, but you just keep going over it instead of just like bending over and picking it up. In fact, it's getting close to the point where he's bent over, picked it up, put it back on the carpet, and then is rolling the vacuum over that same piece of grit. Again, a broom. A broom and he'd have been done by now. DSO Thorn, but leaf blowers are more fun. Back on track, because he's still going to be blowing out there. Okay, it's so bad. I find the Find X to be an interesting addition to the sort of global community of high-end and premium smartphone devices. I'm going to be really curious to see how some of the premium players weather 2020. We're going to be talking about coronavirus after this, and supply chains getting disrupted, manufacturing lines getting disrupted, distribution getting disrupted, prices climbing higher and higher on devices that on paper offer these substantial and significant benefits, but I haven't seen where the sort of peak of the bell curve, your daily driver smartphone consumers have changed their behavior. So this isn't a criticism of the Oppo Find X2. I really want this device to be baller. But I haven't seen where the manufacturer has put out not only just the features, but the education to try and encourage consumers to change their behavior. If you're putting out this phone, I mean, if I'm looking at pricing, the Find X2 Pro, the one I'm going to screen share here, is going to be roughly what, a $1,300 or $1,400 device. We're in Galaxy S20 Ultra pricing territory, and there are some incredible things about this phone. This is going to be one of those like crazy high-end, everything in the kitchen sink for a modern smartphone, no headphone jack, kinds of devices. But the same issue that I think Samsung's running into, the same issue I have with Apple calling their iPhone a Pro, I don't see where consumers are really living up to that price tag with how they use their mobile devices. When I show someone my LG V50 and how I shoot and edit and render 4K video on the phone, I get some quizzical looks. I get a lot of excited, sort of tentatively excited interest in like, how are you doing that? And what is that special? Or can I do this on my phone? But I'm not seeing this come from Oppo. I'm not seeing it come from Samsung. I'm not seeing it come from Apple. They love to put out these aspirational statements. You're going to get so much done with your phone. But they're not really finishing that end consumer interaction where someone who might buy this really will be empowered to do more with their phone than they did with the phone that they've had for the last 2 years. So I just want to take a look at this. This is the Oppo Find X2 Pro from Oppo's website. I don't know. I mean, like, we're in full-on Samsung territory, right? We've got the curved display. We've got the hole punch on the screen. They're actually besting Samsung in one regard. This is going to be a 120 hertz capable quad HD design. They're spending a lot on the design, beauty beyond the visual. It's a ceramic back. That's a premium material. I hope that means it's more durable than glass, but ceramic is still a brittle material, not necessarily something that's going to like absorb shock. I'm way more interested if I were to ever get my hands on a Find X2. I really would want to play. They've got a pleather. So here's the ceramic that I'm showing on the screen share right now, but they're also going to have an orange pleather device, which I wish I could show all of it on screen at once, but it's orange vegan leather, and I love leatherback phones. So that's the one I would be most interested in trying, is a grippy, not glassy material on the back of a smartphone, especially for something so large. You're going to have to hold it in your hand. Confirming that it will be IP68 rated for water and dust resistance. And then this is the actual stuff on the display. A 120 hertz refresh rate, 3K quad HD plus clarity, billion color vibrancy. They show the difference, what 120 hertz looks like compared to a 60 hertz display. That's not what a 60 hertz display looks like, but okay. It's marketing, that's advertising. It's also going to be HDR10 plus certified, a 500 million to 1 contrast ratio, billion screen colors, 800 nits of brightness. Actually does seem like that could be kind of a fun perk where higher refresh rate displays, especially OLEDs, have had some issues with the top brightness on that screen for daylight use. And they're talking about eye protection, blue light filtering. It's flicker free. But they're gonna upscale video so that it performs smoother. I'm trying to get through all of the display stuff because then we also have to talk about all the cool camera tech. The only mention of audio, dual speakers, because screw you, headphone users. You're just gonna suck it and buy Bluetooth headphones anyway, right? On your $1,400 phone, why would you ever want to plug in really nice studio grade cans if you appreciate higher quality audio? And then uncover the ultimate camera. So we've got a triple camera system. We're using a 48 megapixel standard lens, but it's not the last year's half-inch sensor. This is a 1/1.4 inch sensor, which I've not seen before. This is the Sony IMX689. I haven't really seen anything detailed from this sensor, but it's larger. It's a 1.2 micron pixel size, 1.12, somewhere in there. So slightly smaller individual pixels, but when you take that 48 megapixel sensor output and you shrink it, you pixel bin it down to a 12 megapixel final still, that should give us almost twice the pixel size. Well, not quite twice. Of last generation's 1/2.5 inch sensors. So we're also getting a 48 megapixel ultra wide camera, and then there's a periscoping 13 megapixel zoom. They say second generation 10x hybrid zoom up to 60 times digital zoom with optical image stabilization. And I feel like this right here with the optical image stabilization is a shot at the Galaxy S20 Ultra for having a super 100 times hybrid zoom, but it doesn't have OIS. And then the rest of the site goes on to show like crazy night mode performance, dual native ISO, so your night shots are a little bit cleaner, some of the zoom spec and the zoom range. It really does look like the sample photos on the Oppo site were taken from a phone. So some of these, hold on, let me go back up to one of the night mode shots because it doesn't look like amazing like this right here. Let me see if I can make this a little bit larger. No, it's going to move on me. Dang it. Okay, it's not going to work. But yeah, so like one of their night mode shots, just like you can see some of like some blur and some weird artifacting and stuff. Like that looks like it came from the zoom sensor on a smartphone. Yeah, I mean, just like super fast charging. It's a 65 watt charger. They say you can get 40% of your battery topped off in 10 minutes. Fully charges the phone in 40 minutes. Like insane specs, right? Just a monster all around performer. I can't right click on the photos because it's part of that scrolling animation. Like the site animates as you go through the website. So right clicking on anything, it's not really an image that I can grab directly. If I were to go through the site code, I could probably pull those JPEGs, but I'm not going to do that in the middle of a live podcast. This looks like a baller competitor. Again, in that ultra premium tier space, 5G support, a decently sized battery, a 4,200 milliamp hour battery, super fast charging, super fast charging. They're saying improved performance for the in-display fingerprint sensor, little hole punch selfie camera, triple camera on the rear, dual stereo speakers, hopefully actual stereo speakers, not just dual speakers. It looks cool. It looks rad. But I'm really curious. at around, someone please pull up pricing. I think it was something like £1,100 or 1,200 euro. I want to see better who this phone is actually for. And Oppo had like, I feel like they had revitalized their brand in making bread and butter consumer focused phones. You know, they had a dozen different selfie phones, right? Different takes on selfie cameras for phones, and had really kind of locked up the Asian market for like fashion vloggers and beauty vloggers and makeup tutorials and stuff like that. Like, some really, really smart stuff. I've got 2 Oppos over there that were sent to Pocket Now. That Pocket Now didn't want back. That were built all around just, we've got the selfie camera that's going to beat the iPhone selfie camera, and like higher resolution selfie sensors years before Apple was able to get into the game. I'm just really curious who Oppo is going to target with such a high-end device. And if this is really their shot at eroding what customer base might be left for Huawei. You know, Huawei with, you know, the P series and the Mate series, very high-end premium phones, huge camera specs, display specs. They had their own chipset, the Kirin. There was so much activity there for a while, from the Mate 9 to the Mate 20, with Huawei being this huge force in smartphones, the number 2 smartphone manufacturer behind Samsung for a while. And now it seems like Oppo has seen some of the impact from Huawei's issues, the recent technology ban on Huawei products, and now they feel like they can launch the successor to a Mate. Like, this to me looks like if we were gonna replace the Mate from Huawei, how would we do it? And the Find X2, the Find X2 Pro, looks like the answer to that question. From Rosted and Abraham, what is vegan leather? It's a microfiber material meant to simulate the touch and feel in a higher quality way than some of the plastic substitutes we had made before. It's more durable, it's more wear resistant, but it's not made from an actual animal. I don't know, maybe it's made from soy, who knows? There was another question here. Matt Tyler, 40-minute charge is a good thing if you want to use 120 hertz and quad HD with a 4,000 milliamp hour-ish battery. From Fat Produce, I really wonder how this super fast charging tech negatively affects battery life. And actually, SuperVOOC and warp charging, the way that they operate, there's a great video from TechAltar. TechAltar did a video, and someone please correct me if I'm wrong. I think, did Gary Explains do a fast charging Explains video? I might be mixing up some of my channels, but regardless, if I can find it, I'll link it in the show notes. The way that Apple employed faster charging using a higher wattage charger, like an iPad charger, caused the iPhone 10 and the iPhone XS to heat up more significantly. The way that SuperVOOC and warp charging on OnePlus employ this fast charging protocol seems to charge faster than just a brute force higher wattage charger, while also keeping thermals under a slightly lower limit for a longer period of time. So like, fast charging on the iPhone would charge slower and then also cook the device over a longer period of time. SuperVOOC spikes a higher thermal initially, but then would even out and it would charge at a lower temperature faster for a longer period of time. The math on that, I believe it was TechAltar did a video on SuperVOOC. I recommend checking that out. Again, it's still gonna heat your device up more than a slower charging protocol, but some of the tech that they're putting in here is surprisingly effective at keeping us from nuking our phones and destroying that battery life. And TK Bay also looking at this too. There are 2 batteries in the phone to also divide up your charging speeds, and that's one way that you can also speed up charging. But again, in managing thermals, this charging protocol seems to be doing a really good job. So that brings us to the last topic. Again, I think this is like the biggest news story that's currently hitting. This week started off with some concerning market impacts over coronavirus. I live in the United States, where we're starting to see more reported cases of the coronavirus. We still don't have a good testing protocol. I don't feel like our elected officials are handling this potential crisis very well. And we're seeing, again, it's just very concerning. We haven't seen that final fallout moment where we're full on into dystopian outbreak movie. I don't think it's very funny. I don't think it's very cute that Netflix keeps recommending I watch the movie Outbreak. It keeps popping up in my, hey, you like these other movies, you should watch Outbreak. And I'm like, I would, Netflix, but I fear we're living it right now. So instead, I'm gonna revisit my DVD box set of Briscoe County Jr. and just think back on fonder, happier times. From the T-Boyce, quote, concerning market impacts is a kind way of putting it. Yeah. My wife and I have been having some of those serious grown-up conversations about what we're going to do. It's been a very common topic of conversation at my daughter's preschool. I really like the woman, the head administrator for my daughter's preschool. It's a Montessori. And I think she's got a very practical approach to how they're going to be mitigating some of the impacts. But as far as they're concerned, until there is a sort of an educational system or a statewide commentary on handling this as a potential outbreak situation, that they're still going to be operating business as usual. But I love, because my daughter's coming home from school talking about how all the teachers are getting much stricter about, like, don't put things in your mouth and go wash your hands. So again, it's helping to reinforce some of the things that Marie and I are doing at home, and they're wonderful allies in all of this. For my own family, I've been talking to my mom. I've been talking to my grandmother. We were planning some family travel, and it looks like we're going to be putting those plans on hold. You know, the impacts of this are very wide. And I feel like here in the United States, one of the major issues that's going to impact our economy is literally the uncertainty. You know, it's not spreading FUD if we really don't have good data. You know, it's not uncertainty just to scare people if we really don't know. We don't have testing protocols. We don't have a good reaction or response from the CDC. So, you know, we were looking at Easter, and I don't feel like it's appropriate to put my grandmother on an airplane and try and meet up for an Easter celebration where we might go do brunch, you know, in a restaurant full of people here in Southern California, where we actually do have, you know, a state mandate where if there's detention necessary for people who test positive with this disease, that they can be detained. I don't like a reaction where as significant a portion of this population seems fine with the idea of just kind of shoving their fingers in their ears and trying to ignore any potential ramifications from what's going on around us. And this is going to be a trial by fire year. Oh, good. Leaf blower's back. Actually, that might be a chainsaw now. I can't see out the window. Just in time for like the serious part of this conversation on this podcast. Where was I? Oh my god, that noise is gonna burrow into my brain. It's like the worms in Star Trek 2. I can't think with that sound. This is gonna be a trial by fire year for public gatherings, conventions. We're still, I don't think we've seen the fallout from canceling MWC. GDC for gamers, GDC being canceled. That's a major place for developers to get together and to talk about the industry and to talk about business practices and what the future, this next year of video gaming is going to look like. Sony pulling out of PAX was a major blow to PAX as an organization. At the same time, as we can be pretty confident that as we get closer to E3, I'm pretty sure we're going to see a similar fallout happen around E3. We already know that Sony and Microsoft weren't really going to participate. Nintendo may or may not have anything significant to show, but all of those companies are now trying to host their own conversations in their own online forums directly with consumers. So at a time where the influence of a trade show was already at its lowest, CES this year already at its most vulnerable, we've got a disease scare shutting down these organizations. And the manufacturers, the companies that present at these various trade groups, trade shows, are gonna go find other solutions. When we come into 2021, I will be very surprised if we see any kind of resurgence for the traditional trade show. I bet you that over the next couple years, we see sort of an echo of people not taking trade shows as seriously, and that the attendance is sort of a drop off from where we were 2 or 3 years ago. I bet you that continues psychologically, and I think we're going to see a number of tech reporting outlets not place as much pressure. I mean, just think about what happened with MWC. If you were a smaller tech blog and you had committed time and money and resources to sending, a team out to go and cover MWC, you got hit in the wallet pretty hard. And there's no way to really recoup that. There's no coverage you can kind of come up with to replace the outlay of trying to send someone to a trade show that got canceled. So these are some of the top stories. Adichie, no, and I didn't even mean this as a pun, but it was pretty good. Similar fallout for E3. Nice one, Juan. Fallout. I should have caught it right as I said it. So here's where I'm encouraged and frustrated at the same time. I pay taxes to a federal government, so I would hope organizations like the CDC and the FDA can be properly funded to protect and react to scary situations. Currently, we still don't have a good approved FDA testing protocol for COVID-19. So I see an article like this and I'm encouraged, but I still don't feel like this should be the purview of like a charitable organization or a private industry. TechCrunch, written up by Jonathan Schreiber, a Gates Foundation-backed program, will soon be issuing home testing kits for COVID-19 in Seattle. A project funded by the Gates Foundation will soon begin issuing at-home testing kits for the novel coronavirus COVID-19, according to a report in the Seattle Times. The study, based on a nose swab, should be able to return results in up to 2 days and will be shared with health officials who can then notify people who test positive. Individuals who have been infected will then be encouraged to answer an online questionnaire to give health officials information about their movements so that those officials can identify and notify other people who may need to be tested or quarantined. 2 days. Again, some of the markers in coronavirus, I want to say, I think it was South Korea, is working on a testing protocol that can activate in hours. When we're in the middle of a situation like a disease spreading, a potential pandemic situation, 2 days is a really long time to take someone out of commission and potentially tie up resources in public facilities. So the idea here is someone is going to take a swab and be able to test at home before they're a part of a hospital system, taking up bed space, taking up attention and time from nurses and doctors, potentially being quarantined from other parts of the hospital to prevent the spread of that disease or that infection. But even for that removal, like you're going to test at home, 2 days is a long time to be out of commission. In this modern society, how we've built our economy, how a lot of our jobs function, the protections for workers, the entire safety net of our economy and safety system for middle class and lower income individuals, 2 days is a really long time. And that's 2 days to get a report back to then decide whether or not you need to seek any additional medical information, where a hospital will probably need to engage in some further type of screening action beyond just this home testing kit. There needs to be a better confirmation than just, the Gates Foundation sent you a home kit and we don't know if you followed the protocol correctly to determine whether or not this is reliable information. It's one of the reasons why screenings, it's better when trained medical professionals do screenings than people at home. Now, I get it. We all, you spit in a vial and send off, your 23andMe or your home genetics test. But this is a bit more serious and needs to be consistently applied and implemented so that we can rely on this data and get a good sense of how this disease is spreading. So on the one hand, I want to say kudos. The Gates Foundation is doing something kind of incredible here, because our own resources, our own taxpayer-funded resources, are not being employed correctly. It's just, by the time this starts rolling out, we're still going to be way far behind the corrective actions being taken by most of the rest of the world. It's going to be like us in Italy. Like, whoa, not a good look for us to be this far behind. Yeah, from Heikki in Finland, you get the test results during the same day if tested in a hospital. This is, I know what we need to be working towards is at least a fast first screen type of situation. Same day is huge. Multi-hour reply for some type of testing protocol is such valuable information when we're trying to determine the impact and then also minimize that impact on a population. From Matt Tyler, part of the Royal Derby Hospital has been quarantined because of an outbreak of coronavirus right down the road. I'm worried for my kids and grandparents more than myself. And I don't mean to you shouldn't be worried. It has been at least somewhat comforting to see some of the initial data coming out of the Pacific Theater that this is a disease which seems to affect older populations more directly. That the health risks and the mortality risks for younger individuals doesn't seem to be as scary. Still concerning, but not as scary. And also concerning because, especially here in Southern California, we have so many anti-science and anti-vax people in middle-class communities that even if we were to come up with a vaccine for it or better testing protocols, we've got a lot of people who drink Starbucks in the middle of the day while wearing yoga gear and driving Range Rovers that don't trust science anyway. That their children become carriers and spread that disease through that kind of apathy and ignorance. Again, it's one of the more disappointing aspects of this conversation where I feel like Americans used to work together better. Something that was legit for the greater good of the community, of the greater good of the country. Now it's like we've got people who exist solely to disrupt what might be effective. Like, not only am I not going to follow your advice, I'm going to do the opposite just to spite you. And that's not the mentality you want to be surrounded by when we're in concerning situations like potential pandemics. Another positive business reaction, something that could hopefully be helpful in a situation like this. I'm no fan of the company Uber, but this was, again, one potential business reaction to Abraham Artemis. Stupid is as stupid does, but what's frustrating is stupid is taking all of us down with it. if stupid wants to be stupid and it only hurts stupid, I'd say fine. But if stupid hurts my family because it's stupid and we're trying to not have an impact on other people around us, and we're trying to help, that's worse. That's less good. Sorry, I digress. This is a Reuters feed here. Let me go back into screen share. Uber says it will compensate drivers diagnosed with coronavirus. The gig economy, again, people who really participate in the gig economy are some of the most vulnerable when these types of situations happen. So this is a Reuters feed. Uber Technologies said on Saturday it will offer compensation to drivers and delivery people diagnosed with the coronavirus or placed in quarantine for up to 14 days. The company has already started compensating drivers in some markets and is planning to implement the same benefits for drivers and delivery people worldwide, it said in a statement. Bloomberg earlier reported Uber's move to pay drivers exposed to the coronavirus in the United States and said it had already compensated 5 quarantined but ultimately non-affected drivers in Britain and Mexico. Uber has repeatedly said that its drivers are properly classified as contractors. By classifying contractors as employees, technology companies like Uber, DoorDash, and Postmates would be subject to labor laws that require higher pay and other benefits such as medical insurance. So on the one hand, I do want to credit Uber. I mean, like, you built your business on the driver basically fronting all of the costs to do business and then just operating under your umbrella service. This is like the moral thing to do in such a cutthroat capitalistic business model. But this, again, continues to speak to the need for better social services, better social policy, and some kind of safety net. Where I would want my tax dollars going would be to pay for the health services of someone affected by this disease. That I want to pay for that person's health care so that they are taken care of, their families are not impacted. Right now, if you were to pay out of pocket for a coronavirus testing kit, it's like $3,500. I don't know a lot of people that could just take a $3,500 stab at whether or not they might have coronavirus and not have it impact their monthly finances at this stage. We've been putting off these big boy and big girl grown-up conversations in this country for far too long. And I'm hoping that the fallout from this situation, the ramifications of this situation, will at least get us back to the bargaining table in a serious fashion to discuss how we better prepare for these types of situations. We're not doing it. We're not getting that job done. I know political ideologies. I know there are some people who follow my channel that are more libertarian leaning. The free market has no solution for this. The free market can't. And by definition, in its efforts to maximize profits for corporations, is the wrong tool to implement for something as far-reaching as this. So if we want to protect the foundation of capitalism, as we watch all of our investment markets crater right now, I feel like improving our social safety net is the right way to do it. You want people to be able to spend money on goods and services? They can't have their savings wiped out by one health scare. This seems pretty straightforward to me. But again, we don't want to talk politics because, if we talk politics, that's unseemly. We're above politics. Politics don't affect us until they do. A couple other just quick articles that I want to cover here as we start wrapping this up. Engadget's got a great write-up on an institution of higher learning taking some moves to shift up their class schedule. Stanford moves classes online to deal with coronavirus outbreak. Online education is about to get a major, if short, field test. Stanford University is moving the last 2 weeks of winter quarter classes online to the extent feasible to reduce the chances of COVID-19 spreading on campus. This is an excellent move. Just again, it's a place where people are going to congregate. There are opportunities to move this. We're seeing a number of businesses encourage employees to work from home, we're about to see some of the best testing on things like work from home, what that's going to do to commutes, how that's going to impact local roadways. There's so much potential good that could come from this. It's just happening in the most frustrating way possible, where we shouldn't have had to learn these lessons the hard way. But then we're also going to see the flip side of that. I think it's New York public schools. There are, I have the numbers wrong on this, but there's a significant portion of the student population for New York City grade schools and high schools who won't have an option to not go to school, where primary care is being delivered, where that might be one of their only reliable sources for food and shelter and bathing facilities. Those resources are going to be taxed at the worst possible time, where we're not properly funding public education and we're trying to pretend like vouchers are going to make a difference to students who might not get enough food to eat during the day. Let me get this out of the way here. Adichie Anil, unfortunately, some of my classes cannot be shifted online. I think a lot of, and for Stanford's experiment here, a lot of students are going to be in the same boat. But if, again, those baby steps towards minimizing some of the potential outbreak scenarios, again, reducing some of those class sizes, a little less commingling, smaller populations of people, bouncing off of each other. There is no solving this with just one blunt action. Work and life still need to go on in the midst of this situation. But steps like this, again, the percentages improve a little bit. If the percentages improve a little bit because of proactive responses as opposed to reactive responses, hopefully the health outcomes will follow. And Sentinel 909, school is like a germ factory. It's not even like a germ factory. It is a germ factory because schools are filthy. One of, I think, again, we talked about trade shows. We talked about media events. Not surprising. In light of all the commentary and the light on this disease, the conversations on this disease, I don't think any of us, we could be disappointed, but I don't think any of us were surprised to see that Austin will be canceling South by Southwest this year. Music and Art Festival joins a growing list of canceled cons in 2020. During a news conference on Friday afternoon, Austin city officials announced that they have declared a local disaster and canceled this year's South by Southwest festival. The show is being called off over infection fears regarding the growing coronavirus outbreak. Quote, "This is not unlike a hurricane looming in the Gulf," a city spokesman told assembled reporters. "Now is the time to prepare." And so the organizers for South by Southwest are going to be looking at virtual events and then maybe follow-up events later in the year if the concerns over this disease can calm down a little bit. But a major trade show, a major convention, music and arts and film and technology, and we're not going to have that gathering. The impacts of this year will be felt for years after we make it through coronavirus. And the number, like I said, the number of people looking at whether or not they want to go to a trade show or a music festival or a convention, we've got to look at Comic-Con. We've got to look at E3. We've got to look at Computex. I don't think I'm going to go to Computex this year. I really liked going to Computex last year. It was a really fun trade show to cover. I think I'm going to stay home. Vasicos 8, we're seeing cities in China have significantly less air pollution due to coronavirus. Work from home will save our lungs. We're the same here in Southern California. Southern California refuses to look at the impacts of some kind of split time, off rush hour time, work from home strategies. We covered this months back. Microsoft did a pilot program in Japan. Again, you want to talk about a work culture, the Japanese, the honor of falling asleep at your desk because you worked yourself to exhaustion. When they did a 4-day work week, they saw productivity skyrocket. They saw their energy consumption drop because they weren't running as many computers during the week. Everything got better. Work from home in conjunction with smarter flex time work hours would be huge. We can't build roads fast enough to satisfy the population of people that commute in Southern California. But we also have done very little to properly incentivize and the punitive actions against corporations that force workers to go to buildings that are basically just giant vanity structures. Well, we bought this amazing complex down in Santa Monica overlooking the ocean, so you have to come to our building to do your work. But my work is databasing and spreadsheets that I could access from the company's VPN. Nope, you have to get in your car and you have to drive for 2 hours to come to this building and sit in a cubicle so that you can access our VPN. But why? Because we said so. We spent way too much money on this to not let you work from home, is the reason. And corporations that operate like that, I feel, should face harsher tax penalties. We want to put those taxes on drivers. Every couple of years in Southern California, someone floats the idea of another mileage tax. Well, why not put that mileage tax on the corporations that hire people and then make them drive ridiculous commutes when there is an alternative in their line of work to be able to do most of this work from home? And then you could incentivize that with bigger tax breaks. We love giving corporations tax breaks. We just don't love it. We just don't ever follow through on making them live up to their obligations. I'm just saying. It's terrible. Fat Produce. I'm lucky enough that I do have the option of working from home if I have to. Kind of the same. I work in content creation, and most of what I do is accomplished in this office. This office is very expensive, but right now I'm currently making enough to cover the expense of having a third bedroom in this condo. And then Matt just shared a link in the live chat. I want to open this up right now. That apparently the UK government has made a statement at last. Oh, this is live. This is the Telegraph has a live video feed going on of Boris Johnson talking about the government response. I'm not going to play this just because it gets wonky when I share YouTube video and live streams and other video from other channels. But the link, Matt Tyler shared the link. You guys can catch that too. Coronavirus latest news. People with mild symptoms to be told to stay home as number of cases in UK rises to 319. Speaking at a press conference, Professor Whitey says we are now very close to the time, probably in the next 10 to 14 days, where we should say everybody who has even minor respiratory tract infections or a fever should be isolated for 7 days afterward. Whoa. And that's rough coming out of flu season. So if you present flu symptoms or dry cough symptoms of a cold, because coronavirus is basically a mutated cold virus, they're recommending a week of quarantine if you present any symptoms. I feel like many, many more countries, the UK, throughout the EU, will probably weather this storm better than we will here in the United States. I feel like the citizenry of the UK will probably back those kinds of initiatives with less, not with no resistance, but with less resistance than that kind of an initiative would face here in the United States. It's just, again, it's so disappointing seeing the quality of commentary, especially here in America, surrounding this and what our obligations to our neighbors are. I want us to have a better sense of community here. But everything's so politicized. You said something that hurt my feelings. Lastly, I just wanted to share this too. Fighting the spread of misinformation, increasingly difficult as information is coming fast and furious. And so it's very easy to sneak in bad faith commentary on a developing news situation. So Google put out a blog. I'm not going to do a very good job of recapping this here, but I would recommend you read it.
because how we find and consume news is going to become critical as more information comes down the pipe. This is from The Keyword. It's a company announcement from Google. I've linked directly. This isn't another website's reaction to this. It's direct from Google, from Sundar Pichai, CEO of Google and Alphabet. As COVID-19 makes its way across the globe, it's affecting our communities in different ways. Many in Europe and the Americas are just now beginning to experience what people in Asia have been confronting for weeks. We have set up a 24-hour incident response team to stay in sync with the World Health Organization, and Google's leaders are meeting daily to make critical decisions about our offices globally. In doing so, we weigh a number of factors grounded in science, including guidance from local health departments, community transmission assessments, and our ability to continue essential work and deliver the products and services people rely on. We're also trying to build resilience into our operations and our products by testing our own capacity to work remotely. And it is also important to think about how we can help our local communities as we make these changes. Google is going to be one of those companies instrumental in how we react and respond to this type of a situation. And so I would recommend reading through this letter, this company announcement, from how they're going to try and protect people from the spread of misinformation, to what tools they're going to use to enable remote work or remote education, supporting relief efforts in government organizations. It's a pretty heady read, and it's exactly the type of commentary I would hope more grown-ups would be having in their own boardrooms as it pertains to corporate responses. Again, under the best of situations, I think it's frustrating and, again, like a testament to vanity and entitlement when a major corporation forces workers to do work in cubicles when they would be able to otherwise complete those tasks remotely. And now, under the worst circumstances to test these systems, but that's also the worst best way to test these systems, we'll hopefully see some good data on corporations being more nimble, more fluid, more modular. This is going to be better for everybody. It's just, again, like I said, it's so frustrating that we're coming to this as a reaction, where we could have been working on these just for the benefit of work-life balance and for improving employee morale, improving the bottom line, improving productivity, reducing costs for organizations. None of that mattered. None of the things that we're supposed to care about in a capitalistic society were important, but now coronavirus, and now it's going to hit rich old people just as bad as it might hit poor old people. So now we're going to take some steps and some measures to change and shift up how we do business. It's a perfect note to go out on with that leaf blower right outside my window again. If this is going to be the time that they do leaf blowing in this complex, I'm going to have to change. No, that's definitely a leaf blower. That one's definitely a leaf blower. I'm going to have to change when we do this podcast. This is like the most horrifically inefficient, polluting way to blow leaves off of our sidewalks. And he's just like going up and down and up and down and up and down. And I'm not going to be able to do a show like this if they're not going to shift with daylight savings time. So, on that note, let's wrap this up. I'm going to take a sip of water here. All of the links that we talked about, all of the news stories, everything should be linked on this week's show notes. You'll be able to find that on SomeGadgetGuy.com or in any of the show notes for the audio version of the podcast when that goes live. I don't think there's anything I can do to scrub out that leaf blower noise. It's just going to be baked in there, and I'm mad. I'm mad about that. Fat Produce, if you change the time for the stream, then hopefully it won't be during my weekly meeting. If anything, I'd have to push it way earlier. Like, instead of a 9 a.m. Pacific time, like, I'd have to make it like a 7 a.m. so that I'm fully out of the broadcast by the time they start doing this stuff again. It's so rough. So, to echo Fat Produce's sentiments here in the live chat, wash your hands, people. but look out for each other. Um, I feel like a lot of us are going to have to make some tough decisions about future events, travel, holidays. I think there's going to be a lot of impact on everyone on the ground. You probably have that older neighbor. You could look in on them. You might have that family down the block with a bunch of small kids. You could check in with them. One of the impacts of a scary situation in modern society, especially here in the United States, is this propensity to drive home the fear response of you sitting alone in your home. And then you're doing nothing but consuming scary media alone in your home. Now, I don't necessarily mean always physically, like go up to someone's door and knock on their door and open their door and potentially expose yourself to some greater risk if you're in a community where that might be a greater risk. But this is a time where we can come together as small communities. This is a time where we can come together as neighborhoods. This is a time where we can do a better job of looking out for each other. As we're at home, as we're afraid, as we're concerned. This is also that time to reinvest in that fabric of our society, to reinvest in the threads that connect us, and to make sure that we're all okay. Especially for those people who who disagree with you politically. This is the right time to kill them with kindness, metaphorically speaking. That was a horrible choice of words, and I apologize. This is what I hope for us on the tail end of another scary week of this stuff hitting the news waves. The news presents this information, and it's designed to shock, and it's designed to scare, and it's designed to elicit an emotional reaction. But then they don't really follow through after that. It would be really nice if every nightly news broadcast included more than just wash your hands and don't touch your face, and then also added some other consideration like, and look out for yourselves and help your neighbors. Because that's the way I see it. Now's the right time just to make sure everyone else around me is doing okay too. So, fat produce, boo! Terrible joke, I love it. Infect them with kindness. That's awful. I'm gonna steal that from you and I'm gonna use it, but that's awful. It's terrible. So, folks, thank you so much for joining us. I know this was a little bit of a scattered show, and the leaf blower was terribly, terribly disruptive for my own thought process and distracting. But it's these weekly check-ins, these weekly live streams. I'm always refueled and replenished, kicking off the week by having some solid conversations about various tech stories, and then also just knowing that there are other like-minded folks out there. We might not always agree. We often very much disagree on what we should do. But just the fact that we're coming to some type of online forum where we can have conversations and we can have disagreements and we can leave these disagreements and still recognize that differences of opinions, competition, that these conversations are worth having. That still fills me with some kind of hope for the future of humanity and the future of our society. So, as always, every week, I would like to extend that hearty thank you for your continued contributions, both during this live stream, the people who are sharing podcasts and videos like mine, not necessarily all mine, just anyone who's joining these grown-up conversations in a healthy way. I appreciate all of you out there supporting the work of those content creators. And we're all in this together. I know often we use that as some sort of pithy way to we're all nerds, so we're all nerds together. But no, literally, as we face happy times, as we face scary times, we are a fabric, we are a community, and we can use our knowledge and our experiences for good. We can use them to help people around us. And when I see these comments in my live chat, I know I'm talking to people all over the world right now, literally, nearly almost every time zone on the planet, who I would trust to be responsible tech citizens and good resources for their family and friends to get better information. So I thank you because I think you're doing good work, and we should all keep it up. It's going to be exhausting. This is, I mean, even at my level, trying to do better is going to be exhausting, but I think the fight is worth it. So I'm happy to know that many of you think it's worth it too. Folks, we're going to wrap this up. We've gone a little long. Thank you to this community. Thank you to all of you out there watching. Please check in. I consider you all online friends. Friends. We're friends. We're tech buddies. We're tech pals. Send out a tweet. Send out a message. I mean, there are so many various forums and messaging systems and protocols and stuff. Say hey. Talk to buddies. Reach out to people. Make your own safety networks, and make sure you're testing those lines of communication in good times before they need to be relied on in more serious times. I don't see anything that's going to prevent us from having another show next week. You know where you'll be able to find me for next week's podcast, the next Monday morning Tech Chat show on the SGGQA podcast channel. During the week, if you want to reach out, you can hit me up on SomeGadgetGuy.com. You can catch me on the Twitters, here on Twitch, on YouTube. I don't really check Facebook. That's not reliable. You just want to say hey. You just want to say you're looking out for me. You want me to look out for you. You know where you can find me around the rest of the internet. I want you all to have a fantastic week with your technology. I want you to be awesome with your tech. I want you to do awesome with your tech. And I'll catch you back here next week for another episode of the Tech Chat Show on a Monday morning. I love you all. Take care. Wash your hands. Don't touch your face. And I'll catch you back here next week. I love you.